Okay, well, welcome everybody in Facebook land. Hi, guys, to our fourth prequel episode of True Mental Health. We decided these were prequels and not like the real thing since we're still figuring out what the F we're doing.
Yeah, just kind of bashing around right now.
With my good friend, Dr. Janine Kreft, and I'm Crystal Crawford. And oh my God, what are we talking about? Boundaries?
Boundaries. Okay,
Where
so
on
we're
earth do we start? Okay.
this is a thing because certainly it's like I do a ton of role play videos on this, and it's what kind of went viral. So I was like, okay, this is a thing. People were like,
Yeah.
I've heard you tell me like set a boundary, speak a boundary. What is this? But people don't get it. Like they don't know what it is. So I started acting them out in a way to kind of demonstrate different possible phrases or what people could do. But then I was starting to realize that was still not enough because people were kind of like, well, is the boundary too strong? Is the boundary too light? Or I tend to give in. And I was like, okay, how do we got to look at this? So this is where I started to, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, this is where I instituted a like coffee metaphor for people. So basically I was saying that a super black coffee, an espresso, a red eye, all those dark coffees are those firm, non-negotiable boundaries. Like this is my no, and you shall not pass kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
However, that's not appropriate for every situation, right? Depending on the situation, depending on the relationship, all these sorts of things.
When it comes to you bring me a donut in the morning or else, that's like a firm boundary.
Red eye.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So like a lighter boundary might be like, okay, I would love a donut and I'm also willing to go for a waffle or I'm willing for some fruit or something. You're open for that. That's going to be more like the latte, cappuccino, the frothier, maybe it's a vanilla cappuccino, something where you're willing to bend a little bit, right? And negotiate.
Okay. Yeah.
Then I went all the way to the frappuccino side of super sweet, where you don't even maybe voice it or you're aware of it because you just have the sense that something could be created greater if you didn't voice it, or you're just willing to bend. So I use that spectrum just to help facilitate folks on like, what are the differences in boundaries? So that's how we talk about it in psychology. What was that?
How does it work? Like, how's that going?
How does it work? I find that it's helpful. And then there was still something missing. Like people like, well, that doesn't work for every situation. I'm like, right, because every situation is so dynamically different. If you're not tuning into the energy of what's required, the relationship, and like taking all these other things into account, then what is that? Then you and I started talking about boundaries and you were like, you have to be the boundary. I'm like, what? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, so access consciousness really changed this conversation for me. I mean, I would say I was definitely boundary person. Like that was a thing that I tried to do pre-access consciousness. And I guess it dropped out of my world pretty quick with the classes and with the tools. Mostly because I got that it required a lot of effort and judgment for me to determine what my boundary was.
Okay.
And so I switched pretty fast to how is this working for me? And if I were including myself here, what would be different? Because what I started to recognize is that for the most part, I was like non-existent in the equation with most of the relationships in my life. So with my mom, with my family, like I would say for me, my family relationships were kind of the most challenging. And then my other relationships, I was just moving through people so fast that I didn't really have enough time. But so my family relationships for me were kind of the training ground for this. And what I recognized was that I had never really included myself in the equation. And I only recognized that because I would get, you get stuck on something or something occurs and you're stuck by it. And then someone will ask you something, well, what's going to really work for you here? And you realize that you've never looked at that. You've only looked at kind of maybe where you've been being hurt or what's unacceptable to you or what just isn't right. But you've never really kind of taken that next step and gone, well, what would work for me if I was really including, and that's the thing about us, as we typically start recognizing what isn't working before we start looking at what could work. So we end up creating kind of this I don't know what the words are, but it's like, well, I don't like this and I don't like this and this isn't right and this isn't right. We kind of back ourselves into this like non-functional corner, trying to create something that works by doing that, but then ending up with not a lot of choice. And that was the thing that wasn't working. And so that's why I started changing the question into something more inclusive of myself, you know?
Yeah, the thing that's pinging me was based on what you said. It required a lot of effort and judgment. And I was like, okay, because that kind of blew my head open. Like, what is that? Well, I have to go into, are they choosing the right or wrong thing? Then I have to choose the right or wrong thing. And what even is that? And then people kind of get, locked up in this stronghold of like, well, this is my boundary. Well, this is my boundary. It's like, well, where is what's pragmatic or what's going to work here? So can you talk a little bit more on like what you mean by the effort and judgment? Because that's what I was getting from it.
I think I can. I'm probably going to talk about it sideways. I mean, like, I guess, so what I look at with the boundary conversation is like, when you say something like, well, this is my boundary. Mm-hmm. This is my boundary. If you look at that from if you look at the energetic of it, if you look at the energy of that statement, even the very first thing that I look at with everything is like, is that a light thing? Does it create more space? Does it create more movement? Or does it create heaviness, density, and a rigidity? So I actually look at it first from an energetic point of view. Is it malleable or is it rigid? Anything that institutes more rigidity or more structure is going to take more work to uphold. It literally is going to require you to add more rigidity, add more structure, add more effort, because that's really what effort is. Effort is the decision that I have to put in this much effort in order to accomplish And that's what we do in order to try to cope, right? Like we put in these rigid structures in place in the hopes that that will then make our life a better place to be, right? Well, and so I had a lot of those in place, like, this is not right and this is unacceptable. That was a famous saying in my family, like, this is unacceptable, right? And that's unacceptable and this is wrong. And this, so all these structures, all these decisions that past this point, everything past this point is not okay. But what that wasn't giving me any access to was the flexibility, the malleability of creating something that could be functional. It just would get to that point and then it was over. And I was like, was that all that's possible? And I had so many of those that I ended up having a lot of non-functional scenarios a lot. And that's what caught my attention, was like, it's taking a lot of energy to keep these rigid structures in place. And on top of that, it's ending scenarios where maybe there's something else possible, but I've never looked at it. So then what else is possible? So that's what I mean by talking about it sideways, because it's like,
Well, I'm getting like there's something about like having to come to conclusion, and then almost because you've decided this is what my boundary is and this is what I've decided, that I have to stick to it, or it's like there's no question there in what else is possible, or that I could change my mind. It's kind of like, and even, it's like I was attempting to get at that with using the coffee metaphor of like, well, sometimes, you do want a dark coffee and other times you want a sweeter coffee, depending on what's going on. And so being able to be more malleable rather than this is at the end. Because I get the sense when people start to implement boundaries, if they're so used to being the people pleasers and just saying yes to everything, that they can almost pendulum swing to the other side and just be like, no, doesn't work for me. No. And it's like, well, what is that creating too? Because it also creates the separation.
Right. Well, so that's the thing I think that's really important. That's why I think, what is English? But that's the thing I think is so important about adding it, just having a totally different question in your world, because it can be about the pendulum swing. It's like, well, I'm moving from making everybody happy to like, I'm not doing that anymore. Or there was a period of time where I was seeing so many posts on Facebook of like, I forget how it was even said because I can't remember shit, but like drawing the line in the sand and no more narcissists and no more abusive people. And these people are out of my life.
Yes.
I would hear Gary talk about like, do you know how much energy it takes for an infinite being to shut people out of their life? Like megatons of energy. Because in reality, if everything's energetic, there is no separation. So to invent a separation, you have to use all this energy. And I think that's the thing that got me. I was like, that is a lot of energy. And I actually really want to create a different reality for
Wow.
myself. And I want to have more money and I want to have more fun and all this. And if I'm spending all my energy inventing all these separations so that I can have myself, is that working? Is it effective? Is there another way? And so what I started to really look at was like, what is a reality of receiving every energy with no point of view? I was like, well, that's different. Like, does that make me a doormat? No. Okay, so in that reality of receiving every energy with no point of view, I still have total choice. So how does that work? Well, I can choose to have this energy in my life or not have this energy in my life, but it's not from the judgment or the structure or the invention of a separation. It's just, yeah, that doesn't really work for me. Thanks, but no thanks. It's really more like, I want to give you a shit pie, and you're like, I don't really eat shit pie. I'll just put that over here. Then, no, this doesn't align with my belief system, and where you then have to uphold and maintain and put all this energy into upholding a belief system. It's not about that. It's just like, I don't eat shit pie. Thanks, no thanks. You know?
Yeah, I was just getting like the difference in the energy there, where you were talking about before, being the boundary, where it's just kind of like, no, that doesn't work for me, including you in the process, and not necessarily going to the separation energy of like, no, I'm never doing that again, and this can never happen, and whatever that energy is, where it also comes into like controlling others as well, and also projecting that they're wrong ultimately for what they're choosing.
Yeah,
and then what does that create?
Well, and then what I always found is that if I'm projecting that you're wrong, I have the underlying point of view that I'm wrong.
Talk more about that, please. That's always something for me.
Because if I have to put it so far out there that what you're doing is wrong, I have a judgment about what you're doing. But you can only judge something that you've been or done. We can't judge anything. If you look at things you have no point of view about, they're so easy. It's like, so examples, I'll give you a feminine example. So there's some girls that just have, some girls that are with guys that look at other girls, right? And they have no point of view about it. They have no point of view if their partner like checks everybody else out. As long as they're coming home with them at night, they're like easy. There's other women that have a huge point of view about that. It's like a deal breaker. It is like the end of the relationship. So, I mean, that's just one example of like an entire spectrum of possibility when it comes to that one point of view. Like, it is possible to have no point of view about it, and it is possible to have a total point of view about it, and everything in between. And this person creates with this, and this person creates with that, which means there's more possibilities than what's going on in my world about it. And so I think that was another segue. Anyway, but so on that note, I started looking at, for me, that was a deal breaker. And I was like, and so it was creating all this. We moved to a new country and we were dealing with new cultures and all these things. And I started to find all these areas in my life where I had a deal breaker. They were my boundaries. I'm like, this is just not okay. There's nowhere in my world where this is okay. And I could find 82,000 other people to back me up and validate my point of view. And I sat with that for a few months because I was like, I really want to be right about this. And that's the thing about a boundary, is you usually want to be right about it. But then what's right underneath that is the judgment that it's not okay for me. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And I'm going to protect and not expose what I judge about me by deciding that what you're doing to trigger this not okay feeling in me is unacceptable. So it's this whole creation and invention to like not expose what I judge about me. Because if I went right underneath where I was being very adamant and very right about this thing, right underneath that was this vulnerability that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't enough, and this was proof. So that, I guess, I don't know when I started recognizing that a boundary indicated that, but when I did discover it, I started looking underneath where I was being so rigid, because I don't really, as a being, have a lot of rigidity. I have a lot of malleability. So when I'm doing rigidity, that's out of character, essentially. Yeah. And what's there?
Yeah. Frog in my throat. I'm getting the sequence or entities. What's happening? Block them.
It's a pretty charged topic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like my throat's like, so I'm looking at kind of the sequence of it that you were talking about. Whereas before it's like, okay, someone does something and then I have to judge is that behavior right or wrong? And
Yes.
then am I willing to accept it, not even be an allowance of it, which is more judgment, right? Because it's like,
Or resist it. So you only have two
it.
choices. First of all,
Okay.
you have two choices about the behavior. Is it right or wrong? And then if it's right or wrong, you have only two choices. Do I accept it or resist it?
Yep. So, okay, cool. So accept it or resist it. So it's like, and nowhere am I included in that process, right?
No,
Because
you're
it's
not
like, I
even
have to
looking
decide.
at, you're not even looking at your world.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they right? Or I have to resist and go into fight about it. And so that's where I guess I'm getting that, like how psychology talks about boundaries. You already got something.
Well, no, but I wanted to go back because this was really great how you were breaking it down. So if you look at right before you start to try to decide if it's right or wrong,
Yeah.
in that moment, what's occurred? There's a hitch in your gitch somewhere.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh. Or you've just observed somebody behaving in a certain way. Again, hitch in your gitch. You're like, ugh, this thing.
Yeah. What is that?
Right there, that's awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, boundaries are what we've invented to try to cope with awareness, because nobody's taught us that we're aware, that right in that moment, we became aware of something and it hitched our gitch. Now, we didn't go to awareness school. Nobody was teaching us to ask questions about that or even telling us we were aware. They taught us right and wrong. So we go to the first place that we know to look, which is, okay, I have this sensation, something just occurred. The only tools I've been given are, is this right or wrong? And then what to do with that? Well, I can only accept it, or, well, if it's wrong, I can't condone that.
Yeah. So it's like awareness, and then what? We go into like ego and computation about it, thinking about it.
And then we go trying to cope with our awareness because we weren't ever taught that it was awareness in the first place. And that's the thing I started to pay attention to, even with this example I gave earlier, with like girls looking at other whatever. You know, it's like, what I became aware of in those moments was awareness of what? Judgment. Okay, cool. Is it mine? Could be one of the first questions. Is what I just became aware of even mine? No. Is anything required? Could be another question. No. But if you don't cope with that energy as awareness, then you're down the boundary path immediately.
Yeah, because you have no other options.
You have no other options. You've not been shown anything else.
Yeah. So in that moment, then what would it look like? Like more of asking a question when you recognize, rather than going into the judgment of their behavior?
Yeah. And this is where it just takes practice, because like, you know, if like this is the first time you're hearing this conversation, or even if it isn't the first time, you know, it takes a lot of practice. Like I was very, very practiced at going to conclusions about awareness. So I had to practice I just even had to practice the muscle of that I'm aware, which is why we give everybody, ask for 3 full days, ask for every single thought, every single feeling, every single sensation, that hitch in your gitch, ask it, are you mine? Because that starts to remind you that you might be more aware than you think you are. It starts to remind you, it starts to instill into your own world a different practice, a different habit, a different muscle. And then from there come more questions of like, well, if this isn't mine and it's still there, then what else is possible? What is this? What can I do with it? Can I change it? Thank you.
Exactly.
So,
well, and how many times have you said, like, you know, before, even when I'm, you know, doing sessions with you, and it's like, well, who does this belong to? It's like, God, I forgot it again. You know, and then what you're saying about practicing the muscle of awareness, because we haven't been taught it, it's just going to take some time to do that over and over again.
It's taken me 10 years and I still forget. And I don't mean that to discourage anybody. I just mean like, it's what I'd ask everybody watching is like, first of all, how is it, you got to first start to look with anything that you're already doing. How is it working? So if you guys watching this are doing a lot of boundaries, look at it pragmatically if you can, like take the emotion out of it and go, okay, I've set a lot of boundaries with this person. How's the relationship? Is it easy? Is it hard? Does it have a lot of, you know, is it jerky? Is it kind of like being on a roller coaster? Like, what's it like? I've set a lot of boundaries with this person, or I'm not talking to this person. How's that working? Do you have a lot of ease with it? Is it hard? Is it taking a lot of energy? Like, assess how it's working first. That's the first thing to shine the light of consciousness on, is how's it working? That's it. Because from there, you have more information and you can kind of look at if it's even worth looking in a different direction. Maybe boundaries are working for you. Okay, cool. just hang up the phone and keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not having, I wasn't having personally the level of success that I was told I would have if I instituted boundaries. I was having a lot of difficulty in my relationships.
Yeah.
And that's just what got me looking at it. And then, so from there, that's what I would look at is right before you go to set a boundary, what occurs? What's the energy that you then respond to with boundaries? What is that energy? Is it yours? What did you become aware of? Is anything required, or is acknowledging that it's awareness, did that change it?
And it's like people aren't taught to read the energy,
No.
right? That's not even a conversation at all. And so even when I was looking at how you ask, because that was something that I was having to learn when I first started working with you, because I was like, oh, I guess it's more about the energy. You're like, everything, like it's all about the energy. Because I was like trying to get the right wording, right? Oh, well, if I just ask this correctly, and it's like, no, because I heard it so different when you said, well, how is this working? There wasn't a like, this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. It was just like, how is this working? So that you can actually have full information, full awareness to what you're looking at. Because that's really what I'm getting is like, immediately when we block our awareness by deciding what's right or wrong, now I have to like mutilate myself into deciding what I think is going to work here, but I've already blocked what I could know because I've already gone into judgment about it.
Yeah, you're already functioning from a premise that it's just incorrect. It's like you've already judged it. And so from that, you have then everything else gets created from that first judgment. And that's the trap of judgment, and we just we do it so fast, we don't even know we're doing it. And that's why looking at how it's working is so effective, because you don't have to go in and looking for how many judgments am I doing. Just go look at what's occurring, take stock and look at it, and then sit with that and go, okay, so if this isn't working, what else could work better? Like, what could I choose that would work better? Would it be easier to start to acknowledge, to start teaching myself this awareness thing, like maybe I'm not fucked up. Maybe I've just been taught something that just isn't functional. That's the thing I keep finding about, like, that's why we're having these conversations about true mental health. It's like, we were led down a lot of paths that were only semi-functional or sort of functional or functional sometimes. And I was like, well, there's got to be a way for things to function that can work. And then what I recognize is that you have to have total malleability in order for things to work. And so where do you start with that? And to me, the starting place has been, start with who does it belong to for 3 full days. Start practicing noticing what and that it's occurring, and that it might not be yours, that you might just be picking it up, and then, and then go from there.
Yeah. The other piece that I'm getting to is that when people start to hear these conversations, it's kind of like, okay, so if I'm in allowance and not judging what other people are doing, then it's kind of like I just have to take it. Like there's this almost like, do I have to lie down and take it? I'm like, no, it's not that. You're going to include yourself in the conversation of like, well, what works for you? Does this work for you? Does this not work for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think personally, the thing to get is that for when you first start looking at all this, you're going to just do it wrong. From your point of view, you're going to do it wrong. You're going to lie down too much, and you're going to take it. And you're going to it's all going to, you might feel a little bit fucked up at the beginning of this, because what we're really inviting you to with these consciousness conversations is a totally different way of functioning. And in the beginning, it's going to be really weird. This is going to feel awkward. It's going to be like learning how to walk as a 2-year-old again. And frustrating because you thought you already knew how to walk, but that wasn't working. So now you have to learn how to walk again. And so I think just getting that the process is going to feel clunky is really helpful. And then somebody just said no swearing. I'm like, you don't need me on this show.
Well, it's like, look at that, because what is that but a judgment right away about it being wrong? It's just
no. There's definitely going to be swearing, just so you guys know. And somebody else said, I'm so judgy. And that's the thing, is like, we do at the bottom of it think that we're pretty judgmental. Mm-hmm. I thought I was really judgmental. And what I ended up discovering was that I wasn't judgmental. I was aware of judgment times a gazillion. Well, everything that I thought was mine, everything I thought I was doing. And it's not that I can't do judgment, because I can. But every single time that I ask myself that question, I was like, well, I'm doing judgment. Is it mine? It was always no. I was never doing my judgment. I was always doing somebody else's judgment. And that's where starting to ask myself, like, okay, well, do I have a point of view about this? Because I'm so accustomed to doing this judgment in this area. Is it mine? No. Well, then what is my point of view about this? And I never asked myself that question because I had just been so busy doing everybody else's judgments. And that had created what it had created. And as I started noticing that wasn't working, then I got to go, well, it's not even mine. What is my point of view about this? What do I even want to create here?
So if we're always just like maybe tuning in to what other judgments people are doing, then does the judgment, because sometimes I'm like, no, it originates within me. I have this judgment. Like if some of it, I ask the question, who does this belong to? And a chunk lightens up and goes away, but there's like a chunk that stays heavy. It's like, what is that? Like, I know you've said like, what is the lie here that I'm looking at? But at some point it's like, I've decided some judgment originates within me. And I know other people ask me that question. So I'm wondering like where we could create ease with that when people are like holding on, this is my judgment, like wanting to hold on to it.
Well, the question that I ask for anything, I mean, the reason I started a free thing that you guys can play in called Infinite Being School and infinitebeing.school.com. So good. But the reason I started that is because we don't get what it is to be an infinite being. And the reason I say that is because one of the questions I ask myself when I can't seem to let go of, or whatever it is that's heavy won't change, is, well, would an infinite being do judgment? Yes or no? And when I ask that question, I get more of a sense of, well, an infinite being wouldn't do this. For what reason am I? Because we hold on to things. Things don't hold on to us. We hold on to them. And we hold on to them for all kinds of reasons.
Can you say that again? Oh, like I heard it, but I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
What was that you said? Yeah.
Things don't hold on to us. We hold on to them.
Still melted my brain.
So with that, I mean, again, don't believe anything I say. Look at what makes you lighter is true for you. What makes you heavier is not true for you. So if that makes you heavy, carry on. If that makes you lighter, then go with it. And like, so if we're holding on to this thing, there's value to it for us. If you're holding on to any point of view, there's value to it. So, would an infinite being believe this about themselves? Yes or no? Would an infinite being have a point of view about this? Yes or no? And that's a question that I use a lot to start to get a sense of something that is me, that I haven't been functioning as, right? I've been functioning as this finite thing over here that's got all these limitations, but that's not actually true about me. So to get a sense of what could possibly be true for me that I don't know is true for me, I will ask, well, would an infinite being do this? Yes or no? And then I get a clearer sense of something I'm holding on to that's valuable to me for that reason. And then you can kind of go from there.
Yeah. But again, we haven't been taught this, right? It's like we haven't been taught to read the energy. We haven't been taught to be aware. We haven't taught we're infinite beings. So it's just like you said, taken 10 years to just really even like function differently, to reprogram, to start to function from this space.
That's a gift. It takes what it takes. And that's the gift of access consciousness for me, is like, you can start with simple things that actually end up being pretty reality shattering and in a great way, that start to give you access. And you can just then go as far down the rabbit hole as you want. You can have as much awareness as you want. But the key and the gift beyond boundaries is awareness. And from awareness, you have so many more choices. Yeah. There's a question here we could touch on real quick. So do you feel like understanding the why we are holding on to something is an important step, or something that can be bypassed? Well, so what I always look at with why is like, is it functional to look at the why?
Yeah.
Where do you go when you're looking for why? Does it take you somewhere that gives you more space? Does it take you somewhere that creates more? Or do you have to go looking for the reason and the justification for why you chose something? And what does that create?
Yeah.
What I discovered personally with why was that I was always with why looking for the reason I chose something, as if that was going to create something for me. And it never did. So I stopped looking for why. I just looked for that. It occurred now. I chose it because I chose it because I chose it. Gave me more freedom than I chose it because of this. Never gave me freedom. In fact, it always stuck me in the past somewhere. It would make me feel justified and right, but justification and rightness never gave me more freedom. So personally, I just started looking for the things that would give me freedom. And why didn't do that for me? So that's how I do it now.
Yeah, I love that, especially because, like, in traditional therapy, there is a lot of looking at the why. And it's like you
Mhm.
could look forever and hypothesize this, hypothesize that, and just really be focused on that. But to me, it's like just continuing to strengthen the neural pathways that you're really not wanting to continue to put your attention on versus what else could I choose here? And like kind of making that hard right turn and starting to prune away those pathways. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about in Access, and we can sort of wrap up, I guess, after this, because we could all keep talking.
Yeah.
We talk about don't listen to, tell, or buy the story. And in the beginning, that's one of the keys to freedom, not rightness, freedom. And in the beginning, I was a little offended by that because I had lots of stories, lots of reasons. But when I started to kind of dive into this tool as a possibility, I started to look at, well, when I'm ever looking for why I've done something, I'm looking to justify why it happened or to find the reason why I can't.
Yeah.
And those two things just always led to a dead end. They didn't lead to more choices. They didn't lead to more possibilities. They didn't lead to any creativity. And so I adopted don't listen to, tell, or buy the story as a way of living to see what it would create. And what I found is that there were times I didn't want to be that empowered. Like when the times when I did want to tell the story were the times I really didn't want to be that empowered. I really wanted to have like an out. And when I would force myself to be empowered, which is awful, and awesome, by saying, well, I just chose it because I chose it, I was so uncomfortable. But it made me sit with the fact that I chose it. And it made me look at if I wanted to choose anything else. And that's actually what created change in my life. So some of this stuff, seems to fly in the face of all these really healthy things, but you've got to look at if the healthy things are giving you the spectrum of choice, if they're empowering you, or if you even care about that, and whether or not you want to have more power. And that's the thing you got to kind of be with and go, okay, if I really want to be empowered here, is finding out why I'm going to do it. Does it matter?
Do you want to be right or do you want to be free? And sometimes I just want to validate my rightness. And it's kind of just for me, it's like
my favorite thing.
I know. It's just like being aware that I'm in that space and not going into judgment and that I'm choosing it. And it's cool. And what else could I choose? I could choose to be more empowered.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you guys so much. I mean, thanks for your questions and thank you. I adore you so much. Yeah. And so these are kind of our prequel episodes. We're getting ourselves really organized and official here in the next few weeks.
Some sort of rhythm of whatever this is. And yeah, we'll just keep showing up.
Yeah. But if you guys got anything out of it and you want to share it, that would be awesome. And otherwise.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.